If you want to learn a language, sometimes you gotta get a bit weird because language learning is hard and you gotta do something to make it interesting. So if you're looking for new things to try, I'm gonna go over 4 of them in this video. But there's more. This is actually a 2-part video that I'm doing with FitProVR, and I'll let him explain his side.
Hey guys, it's Ari with FitProVR, and if you don't know who I am an expert at VR fitness, VR education, and most importantly, VR language learning. So when you're done watching Cristian's awesome video, head over to my channel. He's going to link my video in the description, and watch 4 ways to learn a language in VR that are also kind of weird. His might be a little weirder.
So after you're watching this video, definitely go back and watch his. I'm definitely going to have to try some of those things out with VR. It sounds really interesting. So to get started with this video, I'm going to start off a bit normal first, and then get weirder as we go. Now for the first one, I'm going to recommend not reading novels in your target language. Now don't get me wrong, reading novels is great, especially at the advanced levels. But if you're a beginner, or even at an intermediate stage, it could feel overwhelming. You're just staring at a wall of text. So if you want reading practice, I recommend reading comic books. For language learners, I think comic books are the best source of learning, and there's a few reasons why. First off, you're not staring at a wall of text. It could be very intimidating just looking at a page of words, especially when you're learning, because a lot of them could be unknown to you, and it could be tiring trying to read all of them. Second off, a lot of words that are used in novels are flowery words that you wouldn't normally use in day-to-day life. Now, they could be useful to learn when you get to more advanced levels, but when you're still a beginner or at intermediate stages, it could just be overwhelming. There's a lot of words that you just don't necessarily need to build up proficiency in the language because they're low-frequency words, or words that you wouldn't usually use in day-to-day life. And that actually leads into the next point, because comic books focus around dialogue. It uses words that people would actually use when talking with another person. Now, you might have internal thoughts, but it greatly matches what someone would say in real life. So when you're reading comic books, you're basically guaranteed to get the most relevant words for being able to communicate with other people. And not only that, but comic books have a lot of images. So if someone says something, it's probably going to match what the visuals are showing. For example, if someone says, like, hey, here, eat this apple, and they toss the person an apple, well, you're going to see that in the comic book. It takes the words and allows you to build extra connections. Because the best thing you do to learn vocabulary is to take it and see it in many different scenarios and connect it with many different things. And this actually leads into the next study method, which is similar to reading comic books, but it kind of does the opposite. You take an image and you try to make sentences using that image. For example, I could pull up any image online and just try to describe it. For example, this one, there's a dirt road. There's a lot of trees. It's foggy. There are leaves on the floor. Now, I'm saying all of this in English, but you do this in your target language. Just try to find any way to describe the image you're looking at. In the beginning, it'll probably be really difficult. You'll probably struggle to find ways to describe what you're seeing. Even if you could explain it in your native language, it might be hard to even translate that into your target language. Now, one thing I would recommend when you're starting this practice, try to do as much as you can without looking up anything, and see how far you could go. Now, you might hit a limit very quickly. At that point, start looking up individual words that you might not know. Like, for example, I said earlier, like, it's foggy. You might not know the word for foggy in the language you're learning, so you would look up that one word. But you might already know the grammar to make the sentence, it is foggy. So looking up individual words is a little bit of a boost to help you out. I would try to avoid looking up full sentences or translating full sentences as much as possible during this practice. Because if you just translate everything, that's not going to help you as much as trying to think through it yourself. And to take that up a level, rather than just describe the image, try to create a story from it instead. So for example, in this image, you could say, a girl was walking in the forest. She was following a path, but she couldn't see very far ahead of her. And then she started to hear sounds in the distance. And then just take the story as far as you can. This is a great practice because it actually gets you thinking about how to use the language. After you're done, you could go find someone online to help correct it for you, or even use an AI tool to ask it questions like, hey, could you check over what I wrote in this language and make sure it's all correct? Now, in the next study method, we're going to get just a little bit inappropriate, because there's a reason why the first thing that anyone asks when they learn a new language is to learn swear words. There's just something about them, and we can take that same principle and dial it up to 11 to help us learn languages better. So how do we do this? There's actually two things you could do with this. The first one is just learn dirty jokes. You could find jokes online, or you could also possibly find things while watching TV shows. Like, for example, I started watching a show just recently, and one of the characters said this. So if you just read the English caption, she says, "What are you looking for?" But that doesn't bring out the big picture of what she's actually saying, because this word right here means to rub or stroke. So what she's really saying is, what are you rubbing there, or what are you stroking there? And if you know that, the look on his face makes much more sense. But maybe you've noticed something about the sentence. It might be a little dirty, but there's an actual sentence there, with real grammar that people would use in other contexts. All you have to do is swap out that dirty word for something else, and you can make a bunch of other sentences with that sentence. Now, I did say there was two things you could do with this. The second one has more to do with learning vocabulary, because there's tons of words out there that you might not pick up on very quickly. So you could attach things to them to help you learn better, like mnemonics. And oftentimes the best mnemonics are the ones that are the most inappropriate. So I would definitely use that to help you boost your vocabulary. Now, before I go on to the next method, if you're looking for new content to enjoy in your target language, I've been working on a web application that I've basically been making as the search engine for language learners. It's still in early phases, but it's coming out pretty well, and you could get recommendations and find new content that you could enjoy in your target language. So I'll leave a link in the description down below, so you could go check that out if you want. Now on to method number 4, and this one actually has multiple parts to this. And the first part is actually pretty normal. You've probably heard it before, which is change up your environment. Your environment can actually play a big role in how you remember information. For example, think about it this way. How many times have you left one room and entered another room and forgot why you went in there in the first place? This same thing could happen with language learning. If you always study in the same environment, when you leave that environment, you might forget some of the things that you were studying. But if you change up your environment, you could connect everything you're studying to different places. It makes it a little bit easier to learn. I've also heard people lighting incense to make the room smell differently when they're studying, because they found that it helps them learn. Now, you can't always do something about your environment, but there is one thing that you always have with you that you could use to help you learn. Imagination. For example, maybe I'm learning the word cookie. The best thing I could do is bake some cookies, take them freshly baked out of the oven, and eat them while they're still hot, while thinking of the word. But I'm not really much of a baker, so I'm not going to go out and bake cookies just to learn the word cookie. But I could imagine it. So what I could do is I could close my eyes and try to imagine everything that's going on. I could imagine seeing the cookies as I pull them out of the oven. I could imagine the smells, and I could imagine the taste while I actually eat the cookie. These are all things that you could do to build realism around these words, because it's easier to remember images, smells, taste, than to just remember a plain word that you don't really have connection to. And this could be used with sentences as well. Like earlier I used the example of, here, have an apple. Well, you could take that and build a scenario around it in your own head. Maybe you're out with a friend and you have an apple and you wanted to give it to him. Well, you could imagine you actually taking the apple, giving it to him, saying, here, have an apple. You could do all of that in your own head. You could just build out these scenarios. If you wanted to get weirder about it, you could stand in front of a mirror and just act it out. Why not? Do whatever you can to learn the language. So those are my 4 weird ways to learn language. And if you have any other weird methods that you're doing right now, please comment those down below. I would love to hear them. And if you want to continue this 2-part video, well, you could go over and watch FitProVR's video to see how you could learn languages in VR. I'm sure you'll have a good time over there.